Welcome to the Wedding Songs Podcast, featuring newly released songs you need to know and the tried and true classics. Get song ideas from the time guests arrive until the last dance of the reception. And now your host, Matt Campbell, founder of MyWeddingSongs.com.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wedding Songs Podcast. I am Matt Campbell. Today, we're going to be talking about the music planning process. To help me with this, we have Anthony Gelo from GTP DJ Entertainment and Good Times Productions based in New York City. Welcome to the show, Anthony.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me.
Before we get started, I just want to have one quick question. Can you give engaged couples a tip for planning their wedding?
I just want to say there's so many options out there, and to pick a venue, to pick a DJ, a photographer, something that suits them and not their families, or obviously incorporate their family. But there's so many ways to personalize it nowadays as compared to many years ago. So pick something that both of you enjoy. And when it comes to music, just see what's out there and always be aware of things that you could add to your wedding playlist.
Awesome. Can you tell everybody a little bit about you and your company?
Sure. My company is GTP DJ Entertainment, Good Times Productions, based out of New York City. We do a variety of events. We do weddings, we do corporate events, we do schools, basically service New York City, Long Island, and Manhattan. But we really try to personalize it. We're not a McDonald's, you know what I mean? Where we really try to get to know our clients and give them a personalized musical experience.
Yeah, that's so important, that personalized, where it's not out of the box, this is what you get. So I think that's really important, exactly what you're saying. Let's get started then. How do you answer the question, what type of music do you play?
I answer that by first saying, well, where am I? Who's in front of me? New York City. You know, I could be playing to 18-year-olds one day and 65-year-olds the next. So that's a tough question to answer because I need to know what the situation is. And I think that DJs in general need to be aware of who's in front of them, be able to adapt to certain situations on the fly. I just did a New Year's Eve event at a local catering hall, and there's any age from 22 years old to 65 years old. And I'm playing, we had mentioned in our conversation earlier, I played Tyler's Water next to Frankie Valli. So it was kind of all over the place. I think you need to adapt to what's in front of you and visualize it as you go.
That is a great answer. Instead of saying pigeonholing yourself into one, it's really based on the crowd.
Of course.
After this couple signs a contract, what are the next steps you take to work with them to plan their music?
Okay, so we set up a music planning session. That's a little bit down the road. Let's say a couple books, I don't know, a year out. What I tell them is we're going to stay in contact that entire time. My phone's on, my email, you could text me, you could email me, everybody communicates nowadays in so many different ways. So I asked them what's their personal preference. But what I say is just always be aware of what's around you musically. What are you listening to in the car? What are you listening to on a Sunday morning? What are you listening to at a barbecue? And there's so many different answers now. There's so many different ways to listen to music. So I will, obviously ask them, do you use Spotify? Do you use Apple Music? What do you do? And then I take it a step further and I say, all right, our lines of communication are open. So you have an idea for a song, text me. I like this song. I try to get a musical conversation going for the entire time leading up until about a month before. And then I narrow it down at that point. But I try to get their musical brain going early.
I think that that's so important because one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because we all know as DJs, couples pick their music the last 2 weeks before the wedding. And so having that communication, I think, is so important. That leads to my next question then. Are there specific tools that you use for helping couples plan their music?
Yes, I do use DJ Event Planner. I'm going to be switching over to SMPL, which is I'm in the process of doing, but that's one aspect. I try to steer them to that because it's easier for me to organize it. But not every couple wants to do that, and I get that. So whether it's a list of songs, whether it's a Spotify playlist, anything, and I don't believe in giving a limit to requests. I want it all. I would like them to kind of narrow down some must plays, but I want to know everything, and there's specific reasons for that. I think music over the past decade has changed in the aspect of there are so many different versions of songs and edits and covers and different ways to play songs that they didn't even, not even 10 years ago existed. I'll give you an example. Matt, have you ever heard the acoustic version of Take On Me by Aha?
I have not recently.
Okay, so I had a client randomly ask that, and I had never heard that before, looked it up, and that has become kind of a staple during a dinner time. It's very slow. If it's on their list, I might use it in a dance set. I might not. And there's different covers of our songs too. I mean, off the top of my head, Cupid by Amy Winehouse is another one. Like if you're doing kind of a reggae-ish cocktail hour. So I try to take their song list and study it and try to put it, not a different spin necessarily, but try to come up with a different way to give it to them during the wedding. Another way that I've been doing recently is using instrumentals more. There's that point in the wedding where all the toasts take place. I've been kind of sneaking in music as people are walking up. I got this idea literally from going to Yankee game. I went to Yankee Stadium, and when they announced the starting lineup, they play Mobb Deep Shook Ones, the instrumental in the background, which is a famous hip hop beat. And I don't know if you're necessarily playing Shook Ones during a wedding, but that's a beat that everybody knows. So they hear that, and it just adds another dimension, especially if you have a hip hop audience. Like there's another live band instrumental cover of Cream by Wu-Tang, kind of in the same vein. That's another one I've snuck in there. But it depends on the couple. It depends what they like. I did a wedding recently, which was all heavy metal music, which was definitely different. And, I kind of did the same thing. I researched it ahead of time, and they had some 80s stuff in there. And I'm trying to see what goes with what. And all of a sudden, it's a couple of weeks before the wedding. I'm at home just kind of like seeing what I have available here. And Jesse's Girl is on their list. And so is Living After Midnight by Judas Priest, which are two songs I would never think of putting together. They lined up beat-wise. They lined up key-wise. And the mix was perfect. And I was like, who would have thought that? So having impact, having input from your clients, and having the tools and the edits that us DJs have in the year 2024 enables you to do so much to personalize the wedding.
So then are you seeing that couples are choosing original songs or remixes? What are you seeing in your area? Because a DJ in New York City may not be the same in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where they may want the original song. So I'm just curious in your area what you're seeing.
A little bit of both. It really depends upon where you're located. I did a wedding last year. It was actually my cousin's wedding in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was great, but it was very different. It was very, very different, just the way that they approached things. A lot more country music, which I wasn't as familiar with. I don't think overdoing it with the things that I'm talking about is the way to go, but it's a nice touch to add something different here and there, especially if you have this list and you're not necessarily going to get to it during dancing.
Love it. I think one of the things that definitely needs to be mentioned is a DJ doesn't get a list and say, okay, I'm just going to play this start to finish. Where what you're saying is this is a planning process, not only for the couples planning their music, but also for the DJ, where this could be hours of time that you're planning this couple's playlist just to make it unique just to them. And I think that's a very important point to make.
Yeah, I do. I think it's very important. And I think it's something that's overlooked. I'll make a folder in Serato for every wedding I do. There's going to be similarities. You know what I mean? I love Pitbull, but do I want to be playing a Pitbull song every 5 seconds like I've seen some DJs do? Let's be honest. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with playing Pitbull. I mean, he has some great party songs. I try to avoid those crutches and put something else in there that works just as well that people wouldn't expect.
Love it. The biggest compliment you can get, I think, as a DJ is getting asked, what song is this? This song is awesome. And you're playing that at the right moment.
Without a doubt. Getting back to the DJ edits, there's certain songs, like September by Earth, Wind and Fire is obviously a classic wedding song, and it's a great song to start with, obviously. But that song can be tough to mix in the beginning because you lose part of the crowd at times if it's the wrong crowd. I use Scooter's edit of it, and it's perfect. It keeps them on the floor. And it's those minor little details that are the difference between everybody leaving and everybody staying. It's like when I hear that DJs don't beat match, that astonishes me because I can't even. New Year's Eve, I had a crowd rocking for about 25 minutes, and I was going to play We Found Love by Rihanna, and I messed up. I played that song 8,000 times. I didn't get it right. And they left immediately, and that happens to every DJ. Great DJs obviously recover from that pretty quickly. But to me, if you don't mix a song the right way at the right moment, they're going to leave. And the other aspect of that is if you get handed a song I had a bride at a wedding recently come up to me and ask for Two Princes by Spin Doctors, right? Great song. Love that song. Upbeat, not necessarily a dance song, but upbeat enough. So I'm thinking, I'm thinking 2, 3 songs ahead of how am I going to get this in there to keep them on the dance floor? Everybody, not just the bride and her friends. And I played Dancing Queen, right? And then I have an edit of Miley Cyrus's Party in the USA with All Star behind it. So I'm like, perfect. Played the first part of All Star. Now I'm in that beat range. I'm also in that era where I could play that song, and played Two Princes, kept the dance floor, went into Levitating, straight from there, straight to Staying Alive. There's all these known classic and modern day classic wedding songs with an oldie, a kind of a B or C song thrown in that kept them up there and didn't make them leave. So I think there's a lot to that as a DJ.
And there's a lot of ways, I think, to approach that. I think one of the most important things that you said is you're thinking 3 songs ahead, where you're saying all dance floor fillers, Staying Alive, Party in USA. So that way, if that song crashes, you can at least bring them back quick. Whereas I'm thinking also, what if that song totally goes off? Then you got to stay in that area. So maybe you go to Third Eye Blind or other songs where you're staying in that genre and era. So you're always thinking as a DJ. That's why I think one of the most important aspects of a DJ is your music knowledge. So that way, if you do get that request from the bride, how are you going to incorporate that into your playlist?
Right. And that was on the fly. But
Yep.
that also comes from the feedback that they're going to give you. Like I mentioned before, the Judas Priest song, that was something that I was literally playing with it. I got that list of songs and I'm saying to myself, all right, how am I going to make these people dance? And what's a banger here? And at that list, Jesse's Girl was the banger, So I'm like, how do I tie that into that? And that's something that I'm doing a week or 2 before the wedding when I'm making, my final preparations. And that's something that A, comes with experience, and B, like you said, comes with music knowledge.
It's funny. One of my favorite Judas Priest songs is Turbo Lover. That would be the one I would request.
That's a good one. Yeah, that is a good one. That was difficult. It turned out good, but I had one a couple months before that. That was all old school hip hop, which was kind of the same, a lot easier. But I really like digging in there when the music matters to the couple that much. To me, if you're a DJ and you're annoyed by constant texts about music, you're in the wrong business. You're here for them. I knew this entire crowd was going to be into old school hip hop in that way. And I'm playing Biggie songs that I would never play at a wedding on like prime time. The heavy metal wedding was a bit of a challenge in the fact that there was a portion of the audience that didn't get it, some of the older folks. And that is something that was discussed with the bride and groom, but this is what they wanted. And I delivered it for them. And there was enough people there from that era and that age group that made it work.
Or maybe you talk to the couple and you throw in a few more slow songs in there.
Yeah.
So that way you can get those other couples at least dancing once every 15 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever.
I think slow songs are a great way to reset a dance floor. Like I mentioned before, I mixed it the wrong way because we're all human. I mean, we all mess up a mix every now and then. A slow song is a great way to bring people back and to kind of like reset the floor, especially if you just did a certain set. And, the older people do like it, and it is a way to kind of involve them as well.
Speaking of slow songs, how many do you typically play during a wedding?
It varies. It depends on the bride and groom. I have done what a lot of DJs do is start with a slow song. That is definitely, it still works. You want to start with a classic song like Elvis, Can't Help Falling in Love with You, still works. But more often than not, I'll go to their playlist and find something there that works a little bit better. But that's one way. I would say on average, probably, remember I'm in New York City too, so we were a little bit high energy here, myself. But 2 to 3, sometimes more. Depends on the crowd. I think a lot of couples now, especially over the last couple of years, weddings are becoming more parties than they are anything else. And there comes a point where all the formalities are done and it's just party time for 2 hours. And I don't think slow songs kind of fit into that as well as they used to. So I might play them more earlier in the evening than later.
Yeah, I have the impression high energy, I think, like you said, more prominent in your area. So speaking of that, are you seeing that there's more dancing than just the dancing part? Are you seeing it between cocktail hour and dinner?
I'm seeing it all over the place. I don't know if wedding planners or maitre d's like it too much, but like we kind of like when people are dancing when they're not supposed to be there, There's certain things like, let's say a couple an older couple or even a younger couple comes up and I don't know, they want to hear their wedding song and it doesn't really fit into what's going on. Yeah, I might play it right before we start dancing again or during dinner, and then just that couple will get up. And sometimes people will follow. That's one way to do it. But you could always tell. I mean, from cocktail hour on, you could always tell what kind of crowd you're going to have. As a DJ, I'm looking for people singing along. I'm looking for people tapping their feet. I'm looking for people asking me about songs. Sometimes I'll DJ a cocktail hour live. Sometimes I won't. It depends on what kind of music they like. It depends upon sometimes the way the venue's set up. But I think you can tell a lot by just off what the couple gives you and what you're observing. I think there's three aspects to putting music together for a wedding. And that's the couple's request first and foremost. It's their guest, which hopefully they align. Usually they do. And it's my experience in kind of putting that all together and formulating it and playing a song that's not on their list that I know works with what is. And that's a conversation I do have with every bride and groom. And I've never really had any negative feedback from that conversation at all.
I think what you're saying, don't undervalue the reading the room aspect of DJing, where exactly what you're saying is if people are singing along, then okay, later on, that's the type of music that they're going to be dancing to and singing along to. Or maybe you play Two Princes, like we were saying, during cocktail hour and nobody does anything and everybody's giving you weird looks. Okay, then maybe I'm going to skip that type of music.
Yeah. But I also think, I mean, as a DJ, how many of us have ever loaded a song, found it, and then there's 30 seconds to go and completely changed our mind? I've done it. There's that aspect too. It's like you just have this inner person inside you saying, this isn't going to work. And, it's like, all right, let me slam something else in because that's going to be better. And there's been many times I've done that and I was completely right. So that's something to keep in mind too, is just always having your eyes and seeing what's going on.
I totally agree. Somebody might come up and say, I want 1 week by Bare Naked Ladies. And it totally goes off and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to play the next 3 songs after this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally changes your plan. Time for a quick break from the show to let you know about the Wedding Music Letter. Are you struggling to find the wedding songs that match your personality and music style? Are you having a hard time keeping up with the new wedding songs being released? Then subscribe today to the Wedding Music Letter by going to my website, myweddingsongs.com, and clicking on the Join Now button. Every Wednesday, you'll get song ideas to build your wedding playlists. On the last day of the month, you'll get all of the new wedding songs released from the prior month. So subscribe today and join over 7,000 other engaged couples and wedding pros by going to myweddingsongs.com and joining the Wedding Music Letter today. Now back to the show. What are some of the eras or genres that you're finding popular in your area?
Well, I think the biggest era right now is the 2000s to 2010s. That era is huge. Anything from Black Eyed Peas to, like I said, I mentioned Pitbull earlier, or Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, obviously. Anything there, even the pop punk too. I mean, pop punk is huge with certain crowds. I also worked for several multi-op companies. I have friends and, we trade business together. And I was DJing for my friend's company. And I took a look at the list. There's always pop punk songs on there. And the couple was dressed right out of My Chemical Romance video. And I'm looking at the list and what am I going to play first? And I just turned and I said, I'm playing Good Charlotte first. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I'm opening up with the anthem. And he's like, is that first song? I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm feeling. And I said, watch this. And I turned to him and he's like mortified. This isn't going to work. And all of a sudden, they all popped to the floor. The bride is air guitaring, you know what I mean? Like, again, reading the moment. But I really think that era, that from hip hop to EDM to pop punk, has really taken the place a lot of the 80s and 90s stuff that used to be out there. And it makes total sense with the age of your bride, even in nightlife too. I think music today is so personal. That was still the era when everybody listened to kind of the same thing. Now everybody's listening to different things. We were talking about school dances before we were on here. Like now you'll play a couple of songs at a school dance and you'll have a certain crowd dance. And then you play something else, somebody else dance. And I think that's because of the way that that people listen to music now. That 2010s era was the last era that kind of really had everybody kind of listening to the same thing. Everybody was listening to hip hop and EDM and pop punk. And that is definitely the sweet spot right now. And I think kind of replacing some of these classic songs at certain events, I've Got a Feeling is the new celebration. Even that's an old song now. You could always tell what DJs are thinking outside the box and putting different songs in different places than they were years ago.
And I think that's an important thing that you said too, starting off with Good Charlotte. I think we're past the days of playing Run Around Sue, playing those party starters that are from the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest, Run Around Sue still hits. It really does. I mean, that song, I can't even explain it, but that song still hits. I'll still play that in certain situations. I'm not afraid of the classics at all. I still play them, but you really got to pick your spots. You really got to zero in and know who's in front of you. And that starts with getting to know your client, getting to know their music tastes, getting to know where they come from, talking to guests. The definition of a DJ in 2024 is very different than it was in 2000. We just have so many more options as music listeners and as DJs.
I think Spotify was a growth of that, where Spotify's using AI to create a custom playlist recommendations just for you, where, like you were saying, everybody's creating their own curated playlists that's tailored to them. And that's interesting you said about the school, where you'll play one song and only one group dances, play another song, another group dances, because the days of radio where everybody's listening to the same thing is gone.
Yeah, no, it's gone. And it's getting harder and harder to research it. I do a lot of school events and proms and things like that. And, every February or March, I start to prepare myself. I start to make playlists. There's certain tools. I use Spotify. I use Crate Hackers. I use Promo Only has a chart that I've used for years, and you gather all these sources. And then what ends up happening is, it's a good way to prepare, but then you get to these events and they'll ask you for a song you've never heard of. You find the clean version, put it on, try it out, and all of a sudden you're playing that song for the next 6 months. I mean, that's how Pop Smoke came about. You know what I mean? And you look at it now and it's like you're doing these school events in another 10, 15 years, they're going to be the brides and grooms. So where is the DJ industry headed with the way music is brought about these days and ingested? It's interesting to follow. And I think it's going to get harder and harder as a DJ. And I think you're going to have to personalize, because if you don't, you're just going to get left in the dust.
Fantastic tip. Fantastic. Music knowledge is so important. Can you share any heartwarming wedding moments from the past?
Yes, I can. There's been many over the years. One that sticks out to me is I was doing a gay wedding a couple years ago. Two sweethearts. They were both awesome. The wedding was difficult. It was difficult in the aspect of there was a lot of things that they wanted in there, a lot of activities. I had a 3-man staff on it. I had myself, I had a sound person and a lighting tech. A lighting tech was also a DJ, so that kind of played both. I mean, I DJ personally, but he was like there to mix a song or two if I needed to be out on a mic or something like that. But one of the grooms texted me and he's like, "Hey, I want you to keep this a secret, but I need to talk to you about something." I said, "All right." So he gave me a call. And have you ever seen the TV show Schitt's Creek?
I have seen a few episodes. Yep.
Okay, so there's a very famous scene in there where Tina Turner Simply the Best is playing, and the main character basically does a dance, and it's a heartwarming scene for this couple. It was their favorite show, and he wanted to reenact, and he wanted to have the shirt specially made, but he wanted to keep it a surprise from his partner. He was more on the shy side. This was not something that he would have done. I mean, it was a plan. We had several of the bridesmaids in on it. We had, obviously, my staff was in on it. How are we going to do this scene without him knowing it? And what we came up with was we were going to do a stroll line out of, what's that show? Soul Train. And at the end, one of the bridesmaids was going to sneak a chair into the middle, and he was going to have one of the grooms sit down, and then he was going to come out of the line wearing the shirt. Now, this is difficult to pull off. I mean, a lot of moving parts here. I was nervous about a lot of things during that wedding, but this one was like, I don't know, how are we going to make this a surprise? And we found a good time frame to do it. And I was communicating with the bridesmaids. And then I went over to one of the grooms and I said, "Hey, you almost ready for this?" He goes, "No." And I said, he goes, and I don't drink at weddings ever. But he comes over to me and he goes, "I need a shot of tequila. You're going to do one with me, right? I really need a shot of tequila," right? So we run over to the bar, and basically I told him, I said, For better or worse, this is going to be awesome. I'm trying to reassure him we're going to do this. So we take our shot at tequila, and he proceeds to go over and get changed. And I'm like looking at the corner of my eye. I'm looking at my DJ trying to like change the song. I made an edit of everything, and it worked out perfectly. It was the highlight of the wedding. All of a sudden, one of the grooms is sitting down. The other one is on the line. He's wearing the shirt. And the look on his face when he saw him pull out and we scratched in Simply the Best, it was awesome. It was just an awesome moment, and it was something that I'll never forget. And the fact that we pulled that off and the timing, I don't think brides and grooms, DJs do, but I don't think brides and grooms realize how much timing affects weddings. I mean, it's everything. And pulling that off in the right time, with the right song, with keeping that a surprise, it was something that they'll never forget. It was out of character for the groom who did it. It was awesome, and it sticks in my mind completely.
I would have that recommendation for every DJ talking to couples and every couple listening, to have one special moment like that that's really captures your personality. I remember a wedding that I DJ'd, and the father of the bride came out. They were going to do their toast, and he took out a sword and cut off the top of the champagne bottle with his sword. And then he poured that into the flutes. Just have one moment that's just uniquely yours, that's for your personality. Those are the memories that not only DJs, but every single guest at your wedding is going to remember.
Of course. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think that's becoming more and more of a thing. And whether it's the whole wedding or, like you said, just a moment. And I think as DJs, we really need to assist in that process. We have the tools, whether it's different edits or, like you said, AI. AI is a tricky subject, obviously, but some of the stuff it could do, it's amazing. There's apps out there that'll just, I had a groom wanted me to shorten a song completely. It was I Hope You Dance by Liam Womack, which he really didn't want to do. It was a special dance with his cousin, I believe. And I really wanted to do the dance, but he wasn't particularly too fond of that song. So he asked me to shorten it. And there's an AI app that just did it for me automatically. I played with it. I was like, all right, let me just see what it could do. I was amazed. In like a second, it had a perfect version that I could just use. I was like, this is kind of scary in one way. But as the technology improves, we can't forget about, like you said, that having that special moment, and that we have tools now to help us do that and create it and think outside of the box and make it meant for everybody, for the bride and groom and their guests.
Very special moments for sure. Can you tell everybody, just to close things out, how can people contact you and reach out to you?
Well, I'm in the process of having my website redone. My website is queensdj.com. So I obviously have one up there, but I'll have a new one shortly. I'm putting that together. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is I'm the DJ, and that's IMTHAAA DJ. That's a good place to check out. I post my schedule. I post events. Sometimes I post tips on there. I network with a bunch of DJs across the country. I try to attend conferences when I can, being as close. I do go to DJX every year. I just went to the DJ Collective for the first time, which was an incredibly amazing experience, and I recommend it to anybody. I'm looking to possibly get to Vegas this year for Mex or Midwest, or, I'm going to try. The DJX is a standard. Like, I'm going to go there every year. It's literally a 3-hour drive. And, I had gone to DJX for years and never really participated much. And I kind of realized that a lot of people go there for networking, for the parties, for the seminars. And I think all of them are important. I think just having that, being around that much creativity just really, really sparks you. I came home from the collective and my head was exploding from everything that I picked up just by talking to people and by watching sets. So I'm always down to network, and Instagram's a great place to do that. I'm the same thing on TikTok, but I haven't quite figured out how to use that yet. Obviously my website, those are the two main places where you can contact me.
Before we close it out, then, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to cover?
No, I think this was a great conversation. I think you provide some great planning tools yourself. Where is it? I think it's right here, actually. I got your book here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Which is cool. And I think this actually sat at my coffee table for, I don't know, a couple months. And I just, I'm planning on giving this to brides just to look through. That's kind of an old school way. It's a book, but just kind of a way to have something there so people can look at and get different ideas and think out of the box And your podcast I can't even count how many DJ podcasts I listen to now. I mean, literally when I'm in the gym, that's all I listen to is different DJ podcasts. And there's so much out there. And just ingesting it all and then using it and kind of copying it not copying it, but, making it your own. Musicians have done that since the beginning of time. So I think DJs can do that too. And there's so many ways to do that now that there weren't years ago.
For sure. Well, thanks, Anthony, for being on the show. Stay tuned for next week. I'm going to be covering 3 new topics, including first dance songs, father-daughter songs, mother-son songs. Thanks for listening and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Wedding Songs Podcast. Never miss a future episode. Subscribe today to our podcast. Follow us on Facebook at My Wedding Songs and send us a message about playlists you would like covered.